Hello, I'm Tom Booth. I'm a tech lead on the Performance platform, which is a little chunk of gov.uk. I don't know how many of you have visited it. Some of you will have had to. But we have a little edge, which is the Performance platform. And our job is to try and help government improve itself. So that's my title of my talk today. We use data and visualization heavily to try and show trends and find interesting things that can help government isolate things that they need to improve. Here you get so many great talks, and I'm sure the next one is going to be one of these that tell you how to build really amazing visualizations, really technically great things. Today my talk is a little different. I want to talk about the things you can cause with D3. So instead of doing something you can make happen, some change you can affect. And we think that is a really important thing you can do with visualization. So the government is notoriously not a great place for the use of data and visualization to improve itself. It still sort of exists in this lovely sort of 1990s Excel world of let's jam together many sources of data into a spreadsheet, which is a very error-prone thing. You can easily drop bits, change numbers, whatever, and that can have a dramatic effect on the output. Also, we build these reports, so we print out paper for a place that has a lot of computers. Why we're still operating on these things that are published monthly, quarterly, yearly? They're not great, and a lot of it comes down to problems like this. It's a really huge place, and our departments are not good at talking to each other. Make it what you will from the evolution that the government has had, but we have these discrete little islands. They all have their own systems to do various things. And even we had one case where one people tried to get how many things were coming by post. And their canonical source of data for this was a tally on the wall in the post room. So that was it. Someone would occasionally go down there, pull from there and transcribe that into an Excel spreadsheet, and then it would slowly make up its chain of reporting until no one gave a damn anymore. But that's the kind of weird, disparate thing we have to deal with. As I touched on in the reporting thing, you get these sort of frozen in time points. You get, okay, so we're going to do a quarterly report on how the performance of that particular report was about blood donations. So how are people using it over the last quarter? And because of the amount of time it takes them to kind of gather this data together, you're generally looking at something that's sitting up to sort of 3 months behind where you are now. And so how you can try and make decisions based off that, you're already so far behind, it's just kind of, it's kind of crazy to try and improve yourself based off that. So we set ourselves some goals when our project started. We want to get all of that data in one place. So similar to some of the great stuff Gecko Board do, we want to drag from multiple sources, as many as we can. We want to go into these databases, go into these, try and get these spreadsheets uploaded, or if we can, help them to learn how they can change that into something better. The tally board, we're still not quite sure how we deal with that, but one step at a time. Once we have all this data, we then need to visualize it. We turn this raw data into something that is meaningful, into information, something which you can see changes, you can see problems, and you can address them. And lastly, which is very important to us, is we want to make it open. All of the data we publish is open, and we're determined to keep it that way. Sometimes that's a hard battle for us. Government is not great, or politicians are not great at wanting their data open. They're quite scared of the implications that could have. But we've had some great kind of front runners from there who are kind of slowly bringing the rest of the crowd with them. But it is a tough and ongoing battle we do have, because we believe that we believe as part of the government that people should be they should be accountable to the public. We take the money in from the public, so you deserve to understand how it's working and how it could be made better. So we've built this little thing called Performance Platform. So this is our homepage as it stands at the moment. There's some words on there which are slightly government speak, because our target is that. So we have this thing called a service. A service is a thing you do with government as a member of the public. So if you want to renew your tax disc, or you want to book a prison visit, or you want to get your patent renewed if you're that smart that you happen to have a few lying around for that many years. And they're the most important thing to get right first for the public, because they're your way into the government. We've managed to kind of pick out some numbers or some metrics which are kind of key across all of them. So we've got these sets. We've got cost per transaction, user satisfaction, the amount of people using it digitally, because a lot of these can still be done by post or over the telephone or by various other routes. And lastly, how many people actually completed it. So we tried to lay down that framework so we have something sort of roughly comparable. And again, trying to get everyone to agree on like how you calculate the cost for a service is hard, and we're still ongoing to do that. So for each one of these services, we get something that looks a bit like this. So we have a dashboard. It's pretty standard fare where we try and put together a bunch of information that comes from various sources and is pertinent to them. And we work with these services to try and come up with useful data for them. And so I'm going to sort of indulge myself a little bit and say a bit of a story about a particular one and a particular unexciting graph and the change it affected in government. So we have this mantra. Like, we believe that like the digital services we build should be so good people prefer to use them. And that comes back to where I was saying there are still multiple routes you can choose to do it. So you could still go and get a form and go and post it, or ring up, or go to the post office if it's a passport or whatever. And our metric, as I mentioned this earlier, is digital take-up. So that indicates how many people out of the complete number of completions of the transaction did it digitally. So we have this graph. It's a very unexciting graph. Like, it's a line over time. It's pretty flat. It doesn't really say too much. So this is a graph from tax disc renewal. They were basically stuck at around 50% for a lot of the time, and they went and did some research and found out that the average digital take up amongst like car insurance and other similar online firms is about 70%. Because we made this open, and because this allows kind of like horizontal viewing, so instead of like data having to go up the reporting chain, anyone can just come and see this. One of the heads of the sort of neighbor agencies noticed this and was like, what the, why are you doing so poorly against these other numbers? And this ended up with them getting a whole bunch more investment to try and like fix this problem, as well as a whole bunch of policy change as well, which has ultimately made it easier for users to actually complete the service. So now, instead of doing it away going and visiting places you can do, or doing it by paper, like, it's gone up to 70%. So over quite a short, you can see the uptick there, quite a short amount of time, they managed to change it quite drastically, and that is an effect that is rolled out for all the public. So I'm going to talk a bit about the steps we went through to get to this point, and start touching a bit more of D3. So to start off with, emphasis was on flexibility, because we didn't know exactly what we were going to build, how it was going to be useful for people in the government, what that would look like, what kind of data we need to store. So we started off with just like Mongo, because you can shove anything there and it will be happy, just as long as you don't mind losing it. But haven't had too much of that. And when it came to visualization, I mean, there was only really one choice for the flexibility that it gives. Like D3 is so great at letting you do what you want when it comes to visualization, and giving you the utilities to take away the kind of arduous and frustrating tasks and just kind of make them seamless, which has been really useful. And it inspiration galore. Like, you go there and there's just all these amazing things that you can build with it. And so this left us with quite a while that we kind of had to sit there and explore what are the right things to use for this? Like, what should we be using to visualize different kinds of data? And kind of more importantly, what kind of things shouldn't we be doing to visualize data? What kind of things are going to mean that our users can't actually understand the information we're trying to give them? Because if our whole goal is to cause change, cause improvement for the public, then we really need everyone that sees it to understand what's going on there. And a great example of this that we did use some user research into is Sankey diagrams. So we model the journey of digital services, and we try and record dropout rates like Google Analytics does. We have some other sort of metrics we have on the side as well to kind of help us that they don't. And we decided this is the kind of go-to thing for that. It's flows, you have multiple in, out, going all over the shop. We put this in front of some users, and they just did not know what the hell was happening. None of them could pull any tangible information out of it. And so the whole thing was for naught, because it may be a really fancy way of showing and really elegant in the way it shows flow. But if someone can't identify a problem and fix it, then what's the point of having it in the first place? So we just ended up with this. It's classic computing, keep it simple. The visualization should be as easy as possible to understand, which then means that we need to move some of the comprehension backwards. So we need better data. So we need to combine various bits of data to derive metrics which have more value than each of them on their own. But that is hard, very, very hard. We have a particular fondness with user satisfaction. It's a very important metric. Knowing how you guys have enjoyed using our service, or more importantly, not enjoyed using it, is critical for us making things better. And the feedback that gets given is critical too. But we have services where there are multiple stages, and at some point you'll drop out to post or something like that. Come through post, there'll be a phone call, then you'll be back on digital for a bit, and then off to something else. How do you break that down into stages that you can measure whenever they drop out, when they come back in again? How do you know if they didn't get the letter in the first place, and then that's why they fell out? And you can't measure the user satisfaction of not getting a letter if you don't know they got it. And there's a lot of, as it being one of our 4 main metrics, it's something that we're trying to sink a lot of thought into to see how we can work with departments and services to, as close as we can, gather every entry and exit point from a service. But even when you have that data, how do you join it back together? How do you deal with the lovely thing, I went to look at renewed taxes, but said I couldn't include a screenshot of the feedback, but there was one person who'd just written banter and given it a score of 1 out of 5. And it's that is not the most useful piece of feedback. And you kind of hope that there's people at the other end being way 5. And that kind of maybe balances the usefulness out of the two. But yeah, it's a very tricky balance and a really hard one to get right. Because if we want to simplify it down to a number out of a line that you can use is meaningful when the thing you're trying to represent is that complex, then the data and the way you bring it together gets quite complicated. As I've kind of hit on with some of the stuff about Sankey, we have to build things for everyone. A missed person seeing something is an opportunity for someone realizing that there's a problem that someone else hasn't noticed. And as part of being on gov.uk as well, we have a right to our users that we deliver something that everyone can understand, no matter what kind of level of accessibility support they need to do it. So to start with the easy ones like responsive, the kind of people that use our system right up to the top, to Jeremy Hayward, who's the head of the civil service. He loves data and he loves sitting on the train on his way to work on his iPhone, pulling out stuff. And so we had to spend a lot of time making sure that our graphs degraded, got smaller, better, so that we could still provide better information, changing the time spans, trying to highlight interesting things in a smaller space. And that was, yeah, another level. How do you deal with people without JavaScript, without D3? I will say we've given this a punt. Our solution is not great. We pretty much just load it up in Phantom and take screenshots fairly regularly, which is not a pleasant solution, and one that, as the tech lead for this, I do not like to call my own, but it is, sadly. And so we're trying to find better ways of doing that at the moment. Colors, another easy one, an obvious one, a common one in visualization. Pick the right ones. People are colorblind, a lot of them. Lots of men are, especially in our senior management. We sadly have a lot of men, which is What it is. And we have to make sure those are right. And we spend a lot of time picking the right one, getting ones that fit our branding as well as fit our thing, and it's good. And lastly, but kind of most importantly, screen readers. How do you deal with people who are partially sighted or can't see at all? How do you help them understand the data as well? Inside of government, there are plenty. And again, those are the people that could end up like wanting or helping to affect the change that we want. How do we do that? And again, we've made a first step where we bundle tables with it, and we try and link our tables and our charts together, but it's still not where we'd quite like to be. And we're still doing sort of further work into what is the most appropriate thing to do in that context. So that's kind of how we got to now, and sort of a little bit about the sort of the future of what we're going to be doing as well. So our visualizations at the moment, through the nature of our kind of discovery, have become very bonded to the application. They're not something we can particularly pull apart, which is a shame for us, because a lot of other parts of government and a lot of other people potentially would like to use our library and use our learnings, and we can't offer that. So we're going through a piece of work at the moment to kind of separate that out. We're going to go back to sort of nothing again and take our learning and build a library that's independent. We think it's important that it goes alongside a living style guide. The ONS, the Office of National Statistics, who some of you may have heard of and used their data sets, have started publishing like a statistics style guide. And we would love to do the same with visualization. We've put a lot more time into it than they have at the moment, and I'm sure they'll be catching us up soon. They have some very, very good people. And we feel the need to get what we've learned out there and to use our visualizations, show their options, both for us to make sure we've covered all of our bases, as well as to help others with their visualization. The next is data summary. So this harks back to the accessibility. So how can we make that better? Because sometimes text is actually more appropriate a visualization than charts are. Like depending on the time someone has available, like what they're actually trying to learn, a short piece of text derived from the trend of the data can be as useful and quicker to digest. So how can we use statistics and statistical methods to derive numbers that we can use to either just simply, at least we can add sort of averages and ranges and stuff to our data so that someone doesn't have to sit there and listen through the whole table and forget where they were at the beginning, so trend is lost. And then how can we use that and turn that into text? And how can we work out when something's meaningful or not? And there's been some very good research going on in there at the moment that I've been enjoying reading. And lastly, just more data. There's so much data we can't touch because of third parties in government, like call centers. We'd love to get information about every call that a member of the public went into the government, especially call queues as well, because then as soon as you were going to go and you went to the website and you saw, like, I want to do this service, I need to phone up, you could say, okay, so you're going to probably wait 10 minutes. Maybe you'll come back. It would be really interesting to see how that affects the change of like when people call, and whether it probably won't flatten it out, but it would probably end up with weirder daily cycles. So there's a lot left still to dig out. There's a lot left to do in the kind of the visualization space to maximally deliver the information that's pertinent. To get that meaningful data is hard to gel that, like I mentioned, user satisfaction. But the most important thing is that we should never forget that the end result of our visualization should be affecting people, changing their view, like helping them, in this case, helping them improve the thing they're working on. And that I see as the most valuable thing that D3 gives us. It gives us such flexibility to deliver these things that can do amazing things. And that's my talk. That's on me. We're hiring as well. If you're interested, tweet me. If any of you want to come and have a tour around the office as well, if you give me a tweet, I can probably sort something out and you can come and see lovely GDS towers. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah. Hello.
You mentioned colors. Is there a strong color palette preference that is pushed down from government? Like
not from government, by our own.
Speaking
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Online people. Yeah. So it's whether we have a strong color palette pushed down by government. We don't have it pushed down by government. We have it pushed down by our design people in-house. We have some extremely talented designers, and we have bent it a bit to get the colors that matter. But I mean, they understand that a big part of our job is accessibility, as it should be. So they let us bend their rules.
So I've another question.
Yeah.
I've done work for other governments before. The biggest challenge we've always had was data quality, which hasn't really come up in what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that because the data quality in Britain is better than in the places I've worked, or is it? Why is it not as big a theme?
Of the sources that we've used so far, it has been good. It's not been perfect, but it has been pretty reasonable. Like there are many that it is, and we work with departments because it's in their interest as well, regardless of our existence. Like it's useful for them to have better data.
With the ministries of education in my region, Latin America.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big things is that sometimes you see data visualization as the end product, but I think it's wonderful as a process for getting insights on what you have.
Yeah.
So sometimes the governments don't know what they have in terms of the richness of information. So when you do a first work of showing different messages, different meanings,
yeah,
they start raising different hypotheses and different reflections. So I think it's a great tool for the process of analysis.
It is, because a big part of what we do is education. So we go into places and it's like, you start telling them what they could have, and then like that, they they can get quite excited, which often takes some understanding of what's appropriate in terms of like metrics to measure. But it is, it is great.
I think one of the challenges is that many times you start working with the IT people who are the ones who deal with the data.
Yep.
But you have to get involved the high managers because those are the ones that have the strategic questions.
Yes.
And it's quite difficult to discover those questions.
Yeah.
Those relations between the data, because the IT people are not necessarily involved in the business.
No. We have some interesting work sort of starting to happen in that regard, which is we're looking at how we might be able to extend what we're doing with services to policy. So then we start moving into exactly that realm. So how we provide the right tools for people who are sitting like on the top of the mountain, looking down amongst their territory, and potentially across a couple, and that gets interesting because they like high level, and that's where again the kind of like how do you combine data sets to provide something simpler, but they also then want the ability to go down, down to the bottom, and that's an interesting one to balance, and one we're still trying to wholly understand their needs around that. But it's an interesting bit of discovery.
I thought that talked really interesting. I used to be a statistician at the Department of Health. So when you talk about the ministers not wanting data to become
yes.
I was just wondering, the stuff that you've shown there is about particular
zipping that. I recognise that. That's Department of Health.
Yeah, feels familiar. And I was just wondering whether, I don't quite understand that this is where the cabinet office kind of sits in government, as it were.
Yeah.
But in gov.uk, do you have like a remit to say, okay, well, we've done this stuff now, but like for instance, Department for Work and Pensions, it's got so much data about people on benefits and all this kind of thing. And are they talking to you about, visualizing and opening up their stuff?
we have an interesting relationship with the working pensions.
I've got a lot of follow-up questions.
Yeah. No, they do have a lot of data, and they're very nascent in their understanding potentially how it could be used.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When it comes to accessibility, and the accessibility of data, and also accessibility in terms of like the screen readers and all that kind of stuff, do you see that as a separate part of your process, or do you see it as part of like integral? Do you see it as a thing you would do afterwards, or thing you would think about before?
It has to be done with. That's like trying to build a secure system and being like, oh, we'll just MVP the features of it and then we'll layer security on afterwards. That's not a thing that really flies.
The reason I'm asking is that I'm visually impaired, and I've got many friends who are visually impaired as well. And I don't know how much. I've had various involvements with government.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're very good at asking people to help them. The people that really know, they end up sort of essentially pontificating around what they think is the best thing to do, rather than actually getting proper user-based testing in that sense. Because it's always been my opinion that if you make something easy for the people that need that to be as easy as possible, so if you make it easy for the people that have the most difficulties, then it's doubly easy for everybody else.
Absolutely. No, that is, and I hope the things you've interacted with are sort of older government, to put it nicely, because we at GDS really do, well, we think exactly that. Like, you've got to start by building accessible software, web application, because then like it is easier for everyone. And we do have a group of people who we do test a lot with. Some like great people. We have people we have contract, a few that have decided to come and help us from around government to test these things. It's not as seamless as it probably should be. It's in terms of like getting the test and the feedback, but it's something that we do deeply care about. Like, you might have one of our very good friends, Ed Souden, has done some talks recently on the accessibility we do, and him and another gentleman called Tom Byers really champion that for the GovUK front end a lot. And yeah, it's good. It's part of our interviews for all of the front end people we bring in. Big part.
Right.
Like that, yeah.
You mentioned that you trying to look for alternatives when there is no JavaScript. So
yes.
Basically, you can use D3.
Yes.
What alternatives have you done?
At the moment, we have done the simplest but like very clunky thing, which is take screenshots of it pretty much automatically. We are looking at how potentially we could try and remove the DOM to a certain extent. So I'm quite interested in some of the work that's happening around React and similar like virtual DOMs, both in terms of how can we, because we're a very JavaScript heavy application, how can we deliver something that needs to be re-rendered and share the same code between client and server, but also on the server, these virtual DOMs allow just strings, which makes, well, one, it uses the same kind of elements and names as it does, and some similar kind of underlying, but ends up in not manipulating a DOM, which is useful for the server. So we're going to have a play around with some of that, but it's not, it's still young and in the kind of like, I'm having a hack on a Friday afternoon kind of stage, which is not, it's not, we have a lot to do.
I don't know if it would be useful. I mean, I work on an analytics product and also using D3. And we've got specialists and non-specialists. And the specialists are the ones that, the non-specialists are the ones that will produce the simple chart. And from there, they've got a lot of questions. And the specialists, they want to go further. So one of the things that we are doing is allow them to download the data themselves in CSV. And then obviously, because they work a lot with Excel, developing in Excel. So the second step is actually downloaded in Excel's ST. And also even in some cases, we're thinking of creating the Excel spreadsheet with charts in it.
Nice.
And that could be a way of,
yeah.
you know,
It's
avoid the whole JavaScript, and still you can give the
kind of basic.
chance.
Yeah, now that's a nice thing. I'd be curious as to how fun it is generating Excel with charts in it. I imagine that would be.
Well,
but,
that's not an easy thing,
but it's useful for the users. Yeah. Then it's the most important thing. No, it's a really because when I touched on data summary, that was some of the thing in a similar kind of way. It was like, do we actually need the charts? Like, if we can get to a point where we can say, like, we can describe the important information out of it with summary, can we use that as our base in a similar way that it's starting with the most accessible thing and then layering on? Should we be treating like charts as something that are inherently inaccessible as our primary source of delivering information to users? And should we be working on like what's the best thing we can do without them, and then have them when people can, which is an interesting one. Hello.
When you mention when you say about library, does it include the public API endpoint?
Yeah, well, all of the stuff we work on, apart from like our SSL keys and passwords and stuff, is on GitHub. So if you look, there's an organization called AlphaGov, and our various our repositories are named quite cryptically after theatrical things, which is an irritation of mine, but it's something I inherited. So our front end's called Spotlight at the moment, our back end's Backdrop, and some configuration services called Stagecraft. And yeah, we're currently trying to pull apart Spotlight. The visualization library will be definitely. Yeah. All the endpoints. So the reason I got there is our client libraries are all there. So you can get at it all. We've got quite a rich, probably too rich a query language at the moment, but all of the links. So if you go to a graph, you can click on the title, and you get links to the JSON, CSV image. Yeah, we want people to do that. We haven't, like, as we're still maturing, we will get to a point where we start turning up at hackathons, being like, we've got this pile of data. Have fun with it, and I look forward to us getting to that day. It will be soon, but yeah, just a bit more maturation. Cool.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So you started going crazy using the powerful D3.
Yeah.
And ended up doing DB simple.
Yeah.
Do you still need D3, or is it Google China?
That is a good question. We still, and it kind of it hints a bit on what this lady was saying is that there may be a point where we want to do a mixture of the two in terms of the simple and the complex, depending on the kind of user that we have engaging. So we want to definitely keep our feet in with it. Obviously, there are some questions because it would make life easier in terms of the fallback, but the benefits of because we still would quite like that flexibility for future things we have to integrate with as well. But yeah, the what we do with a more specialist user is something that we're kind of currently working on a prototype for as well. So it's useful just to have one way of charting. Thank you.